Most people think being nice protects them from rejection or conflict. But what if I told you that being nice is actually one of the most dangerous behaviors you can develop? Not because it makes you a good person, but because it paints a silent target on your back, signaling to others, often without them realizing it, that you are someone who can be used, drained, manipulated, and emotionally harvested without resistance. And what if I told you that the world does not reward nice people? It consumes them. People don't see your niceness as kindness. They see it as a lack of power, a lack of boundaries, a lack of consequences. And whether you want to believe it or not, the human brain is biologically wired to probe, push, and exploit anything that doesn't push back. Meaning, the nicer you are, the more likely you are to attract the very people who survive by feeding on your silence, your guilt, your patience, and your inability to say no. The horrifying part is that you don't realize this is happening until it's too late, because you were conditioned, psychologically trained, to believe that being good means being agreeable, submissive, and self-sacrificing. So you learn to swallow your anger, bury your needs, and smile through disrespect, believing that if you were harmless enough, the world would protect you, not knowing that predators are not drawn to strength, but to softness disguised as virtue. Your niceness isn't love, it's fear, and the reason you don't see the danger is because you've told yourself a comforting lie your whole life. A lie that says, if I'm nice to people, they'll be nice back. Even though your own lived experiences prove over and over again that people rarely return what they take from you. And in fact, the more understanding and accommodating you are, the more entitled they become to taking more. Every time you say yes when your entire body is begging you to say no, every time you make excuses for people who would never defend you, every time you clean up messes you didn't create or carry burdens that aren't yours, you send a silent message into the world that says, I can be exploited. And human psychology guarantees that someone, friend, co-worker, partner, sibling, will take you up on that offer. What makes this even darker is that people do not have to be malicious to abuse your niceness. The majority of them do it instinctively, unconsciously, automatically, because the brain learns patterns quickly. And if you teach someone that you will tolerate disrespect, lack of effort, or emotional laziness, they will stop giving you anything more than the bare minimum. Not because they hate you, but because you have programmed them to believe that you don't require anything more. Being nice is risky because it teaches people how to treat you. And when you treat everyone else's comfort as sacred while treating your own as optional, you create a lopsided psychological environment where they expect your sacrifice and feel betrayed the moment you stop providing it. But here is the part people don't talk about, the part that's truly unsettling. When your identity becomes tied to being the nice one, you stop being a person in the eyes of others and start becoming a function, a tool, a convenience, the emotional equivalent of a vending machine that dispenses support, patience, forgiveness, and understanding on command. And once they get addicted to that version of you, they never let you change. You already know this is true because you've lived it. You've stayed silent to avoid being called dramatic. You've held back the truth to avoid being called rude. You've tolerated disrespect to avoid being called difficult. And all the while, you convinced yourself that your suffering was proof of your strength, when in reality, it was proof that you were slowly disappearing. People don't notice when nice people break down, because nice people never make noise when they fall apart. And that is the tragedy. You can be drowning while smiling. You can be bleeding while helping others. And they will never see it because you've trained them not to look, not to ask, not to care. And when you finally collapse from the weight of everything you never said, they will act surprised, as if they didn't spend years ignoring the subtle signs that you were shattering. Niceness is not kindness. Niceness is self-erasure. And the reason it's so dangerous is because it doesn't destroy you quickly. It destroys you gradually, quietly, gently, like a slow emotional suffocation where you don't realize you've been losing air until there's none left. And the darkest truth of all is this: being nice is often the first step toward becoming resentful, bitter, exhausted, or emotionally numb. Because your brain can only withstand so many betrayals, disappointments, and one-sided relationships before it starts shutting down to protect itself. And once that happens, you stop giving because you want to, and start giving because you feel obligated, trapped, or afraid of what might happen if you stop. The world is full of people who will take advantage of your silence, but it is also full of people who will punish you the moment you speak. And the irony is that both of these outcomes happen more often to nice people than anyone else. Because niceness makes you predictable, compliant, and emotionally accessible, which are the exact traits manipulative personalities seek out first. And if you've ever wondered why certain people seem drawn to you, why the broken, the selfish, the angry, the chaotic, the draining, the emotionally unstable always seem to gravitate toward you, it's not an accident. It's the psychological law of supply and demand. Because the more you give, the more takers appear, and the more they take, the more you shrink. Until one day you realize the nice person you're so proud of is actually the reason your life feels so unbalanced. But what if I told you the real danger of being nice is not how others treat you, but how you slowly begin treating yourself? Because every time you silence your needs, you train your brain to believe they don't matter. And every time you choose someone else over yourself, you reinforce the belief that you are worth less than the people you serve. And eventually, that belief becomes your identity, your entire self-image reduced to a role you never chose but were conditioned to play. The reason you don't know who you are without being nice is because niceness became your armor, long before you even understood what boundaries were, meaning that somewhere in your past, maybe in childhood, maybe in your teenage years, maybe in the relationships that shaped you, you learned that the safest version of yourself was the smallest version of yourself. And so you made yourself quiet, agreeable, pleasant, and predictable, hoping that if you gave people no reason to hurt you, they wouldn't. But human psychology doesn't work that way, because people rarely hurt you because you deserve it. They hurt you because they can. When you grow up believing that your value depends on how easy you are to handle, you start shrinking parts of your personality just to make sure no one feels threatened, annoyed, or inconvenienced by you. And over time, you end up performing a sanitized version of yourself, a version that smiles when it's tired, apologizes for things it didn't do, absorbs emotions that aren't its responsibility, and swallows anger that should have been released long ago, all because you're terrified of being labeled difficult, dramatic, or selfish. Your need to be nice wasn't born from compassion. It was born from survival. And the reason this truth is so dark is because it forces you to confront the possibility that your entire personality might be woven out of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being enough, and fear of being too much at the same time. A psychological paradox that keeps you trapped in an impossible mission to be everything for everyone while being nothing for yourself. People mistake your niceness for purity, but if they knew what it cost you, they would realize it has nothing to do with purity and everything to do with trauma. Because kindness is a choice, but compulsive niceness is a trauma response. A reflex your body executes whether you want it to or not, forcing you to comply with other people's expectations out of an ancient instinct to keep yourself safe, seen, or accepted. And here is the darkest twist. The people who benefit from your niceness are the same ones who make you believe you're ungrateful, overreacting, or not yourself the moment you stop performing it, because your nice person identity is convenient for them. And the idea of you developing boundaries is uncomfortable, destabilizing, threatening, and inconvenient to their lifestyle. So instead of adapting to your growth, they guilt you into shrinking again. This is why setting boundaries feels like betrayal, not against others, but against yourself, because you've been trained to believe that taking care of your needs is something you must justify, apologize for, or feel guilty about. And so the moment you try to stand up for yourself, your mind attacks you with intrusive thoughts. You're selfish. You're hurting them. They'll leave you. You're the problem. And since you've relied on niceness for so long, you surrender to the guilt and fall back into the familiar role, even though that role is quietly destroying your life. What people don't tell you is that when you're always nice, you become emotionally replaceable, because being overly accommodating makes you predictable, and predictability makes you boring. And boring people are easily taken for granted, easily dismissed, and easily forgotten, which is a brutal truth, but one you've secretly felt in the relationships that faded the moment you stopped overgiving, or the friendships that fell apart the moment you asked for even a fraction of what you provided. Toxic people love nice people, not because they appreciate them, but because nice people don't threaten their power. And the reason you attract broken individuals is because they sense, consciously or not, that you will absorb their chaos without demanding accountability. And they cling to you because you are the emotional landfill, willing to hold their unresolved pain, insecurity, and inner conflict, while they give you nothing but crumbs in return. And while you think your niceness is healing them, what's really happening is far more sinister. They are using you as emotional anesthesia, numbing themselves with your empathy, your understanding, your forgiveness, and your patience, while you slowly bleed out emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, giving pieces of yourself to people who were never planning to reciprocate. But there is an even darker danger, one that most people never acknowledge because it forces them to confront a truth more uncomfortable than being exploited. Sometimes, being nice is not about protecting others. It's about protecting yourself from the version of you that you're afraid will emerge if you stop being nice. Because somewhere deep inside, beneath the calm exterior, beneath the soft tone, beneath the agreeable smile, there is a version of you who is angry, loud, sharp, unapologetic, and real. A version you've spent years suppressing, because you fear that if you unleash it, people will reject you, ridicule you, or abandon you. This repressed version of you, your shadow, holds the boundaries you never set, the anger you never expressed, the self-worth you never claimed, and the power you never used. And the reason people prefer your nice version is because your shadow version would stop tolerating their behavior instantly, which is why they, and sometimes even you, want it buried. But suppression has consequences, because the longer you silence your shadow, the stronger it becomes, and eventually it begins leaking through your niceness in the form of quiet resentment, bitterness, exhaustion, passive-aggressive thoughts, numbness, and internal rage that terrifies you, because it feels foreign, even though it has always been part of you, a part you were taught to fear rather than integrate. Niceness becomes a mask, but masks get heavy, and eventually your face begins to suffocate beneath the weight of pretending, and that suffocation shows up in ways you don't expect. Chronic fatigue, burnout, depression, anxiety, emotional emptiness, a sense of being lost, unfulfilled relationships, one-sided friendships, unexplained anger, and a deep, aching loneliness that comes from realizing you are surrounded by people who know the version of you that serves them, not the version of you that is real. And maybe the darkest truth of all is this: being nice doesn't keep you safe. Being nice keeps you trapped. Because as long as you rely on niceness for protection, you will never develop the strength, boundaries, self-respect, or internal power required to build relationships where you are valued for who you are instead of what you can provide. Meaning your niceness is not saving you, it is slowly erasing you. You weren't born to be a placeholder, an emotional crutch, a peacekeeper, or a convenience. But as long as you keep playing the role of the nice one, the world will never treat you as anything more, and the people who benefit from your performance will ensure you never realize how powerful you truly are without it. And this is why being nice is not just risky, it is self-destructive, because it convinces you that the watered-down version of yourself is the real you, when in truth, the real you is the version you're afraid to become. The moment you stop being nice, the world does not clap for you, it does not thank you, it does not appreciate your growth, because people who benefited from your compliance experience your boundaries as violence, your self-respect as disrespect, and your silence as rebellion, meaning that the second you reclaim even a fraction of your power, the people who depended on your weakness begin to panic. They panic because your niceness was their leverage, their comfort, their emotional currency, and their shield against their own accountability. And when you take that away, they lose access not just to your kindness, but to the version of themselves they get to be when you expect nothing from them. The version that doesn't have to grow, change, apologize, self-reflect, or evolve. Because you were always absorbing the consequences of their behavior on their behalf. The moment you stop being nice, their entire ecosystem collapses. And that collapse triggers the very reactions you always feared. Silent treatment, guilt trips, accusations of selfishness, emotional withdrawal, passive-aggressive comments, or sudden shifts in loyalty. Not because you have done anything wrong, but because you have disrupted the psychological arrangement they built on top of your self-sacrifice. But here's the dark paradox. The same people who punish you for changing were never loyal to you in the first place. They were loyal to the benefit of your niceness, meaning they were not attached to you, but to the version of you that never said no, never pushed back, never needed anything, never challenged them, and never forced them to become better. And when you realize this deep in your bones, it breaks something inside of you, something you didn't know was fragile until it cracked. Because nothing feels as painful as discovering that people never loved the real you. They loved the role you played, and the moment you stopped performing, their affection evaporated like it was never real to begin with. This is the moment people fall into one of two paths. They either collapse back into niceness out of fear, guilt, and emotional exhaustion, or they step into a new version of themselves, stronger, sharper, more grounded, more authentic. And for the first time in their life, they say, no more, and mean it. But stepping into that version of yourself is terrifying, because you've been conditioned to believe that strength makes you unlovable, that boundaries make you difficult, that saying no makes you selfish, and that prioritizing yourself makes you cruel, even though none of those things are true. They are simply the beliefs that nice people inherit from a world that thrives on their compliance. When you stop being nice, you begin to see people clearly for the first time. Not who they pretend to be, but who they truly are when they cannot use you. And the clarity is devastating, because you start recognizing patterns you were once too kind to notice. The charmant friend who only called you when they needed something. The family member who guilted you for having limits. The partner who took your emotional labor but never offered their own. And the co-workers who treated your extra effort as routine instead of a favor. And once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them, And that is the beginning of your awakening, because you start realizing that your niceness wasn't kindness at all. It was a form of self-abandonment disguised as generosity, a psychological habit that made you overextend your time, your energy, your forgiveness, and your identity just to avoid losing people who were never afraid of losing you. The world changes when you stop being nice. But the change is not external. It is internal, because suddenly, the anger you buried for years begins to surface. Not to destroy you, but to liberate you. Because anger is not hatred. Anger is the part of you that refuses to be stepped on any longer. The part that demands justice, respect, and reciprocity. The part that says, I matter, even when others disagree. This anger is not a monster. It is a messenger, and the message is simple. You have spent too much of your life giving people the power to define you, and now it is time to take that power back. But taking it back is painful, because reclaiming yourself requires killing a version of you that the world adored, and killing that version feels like killing your identity, your safety, your belonging, your history, and everything you once believed kept you lovable, even though what it really kept you was small. The grief that follows is real. Grief for the friendships that crumble when you become honest. Grief for the relationships that collapse when you stop over-functioning. Grief for the version of you that everyone preferred. Grief for the lost years spent trying to earn love from people who only valued your silence, and grief for the opportunities you missed because you were too busy keeping other people comfortable. But beneath that grief is something far more powerful, something that changes the trajectory of your life once you allow it to take root. A growing awareness that you were never meant to live at the mercy of other people's expectations, and that the version of you they wanted was never the version you were born to be. When you stop being nice, something beautiful and frightening emerges from within you. Authenticity, the raw, unfiltered, unapologetic expression of who you are without the mask, without the guilt, without the fear of being too much or not enough. And this version of you may not please everyone, but it will finally please you. You start asking yourself questions you avoided for years. What do I want? What do I need? What do I feel? What do I deserve? And for the first time, the answers matter, because you're no longer silencing them to protect people who never protected you. The world reacts to your boundaries with shock, anger, or disappointment because they are mourning the death of the version of you that made their life easier. But what they fail to realize is that the death they are mourning is the beginning of your rebirth. Being unlabeled as nice frees you from expectations you were never meant to fulfill. And what grows in the space that niceness once suffocated is self-respect. A force so powerful that once you taste it, you will never go back to betraying yourself for acceptance that was never real. And slowly, the chaos settles. Not because everyone changes, but because you do. And you begin drawing different people, different opportunities, different relationships, and different environments into your life. Not because you forced them, but because your new energy repels those who once preyed on your niceness and attracts those who respect your boundaries, admire your strength, and value your authenticity. This is the moment you finally understand the truth that nice people never learn until it's almost too late. Losing people is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Losing yourself is, and reclaiming yourself will feel like the first breath. After years of drowning in silence, you convinced yourself was kindness. Every time you've convinced yourself that being agreeable makes you a better person, you've unknowingly trained the world to see you as someone whose boundaries are negotiable, whose time is optional, and whose emotional needs are secondary. And the reason this happens is because human psychology is wired to prioritize what is scarce. resist what is firm, and exploit what is easy, which means that every act of excessive niceness quietly lowers your perceived value in the social hierarchy, not because people are evil, but because your brain is constantly scanning for cues that indicate who must be respected and who can be handled without consequence. And the moment you choose silence over self-respect, the moment you avoid conflict to keep the peace, the moment you let someone cross a line without addressing it, you broadcast a message you don't even hear yourself sending. I am safe to ignore. And the truth becomes even darker when you realize that the people who benefit the most from your niceness are often the ones who would never repay it, because human nature has a brutal flaw. When someone gives too much, we assume they have little to protect. And when someone tolerates too much, we assume they have little power. And that is why the nicest people often attract the most inconsiderate partners, the most manipulative friends, and the most demanding co-workers, not because they deserve disrespect, but because they radiate a psychological signal that says they won't fight back. And the people who crave control are magnetically drawn to those signals like predators drawn to open wounds. Your niceness becomes a disguise that hides your frustration, your exhaustion, your resentment, and your unmet needs. But the people around you don't see those things, because niceness is such a convenient mask, a mask that protects everyone except the person wearing it. And the longer you keep it on, the more trapped you become in the role of the reliable helper, the emotional sponge, the good person others praise but never prioritize. Because the world doesn't reward kindness when it is used as a substitute for self-worth. It rewards confidence, clarity, and boundaries. And if you don't have those, kindness becomes a liability that drains you slowly, invisibly, and relentlessly. And you know this already, because somewhere deep inside you, there's a version of yourself that is tired. Tired of being the peacekeeper. Tired of absorbing tension that isn't yours. Tired of swallowing your anger so no one feels uncomfortable. Tired of sacrificing your desires to make someone else's life easier. And the reason that exhaustion feels so heavy is because you've been living against your own psychology, fighting your instincts to avoid disappointing people who don't hesitate to disappoint you. And if you keep doing that long enough, something inside you breaks. Your honesty, your self-respect, your inner fire, and eventually you start to question your own worth. Not because you are weak, but because you've been giving pieces of yourself to people who were never meant to hold them. Being nice is not the problem. Being nice at the expense of your identity is, and every time you let someone get away with a behavior that hurts you, you reinforce a psychological loop that says your feelings are less important than their approval, their comfort, their happiness. And the darkest part of this truth is that the people you are trying so hard to please rarely value your sacrifices as deeply as you hope. Not because they are heartless, but because humans naturally undervalue what requires no effort to obtain. And if your respect is too easily given, if your time is always available, if your forgiveness is automatic, the people around you stop seeing you as a person with needs and start seeing you as an emotional utility, a stabilizer, a giver who never runs out, even though you do. And what makes this reality so painful is that your niceness didn't come from weakness. It came from survival, because at some point in your life, perhaps in childhood, perhaps during a toxic relationship, perhaps after being punished for speaking up, you learned that shrinking yourself was safer than standing your ground, that pleasing others was easier than confronting them, that smiling through discomfort was less dangerous than expressing it. And so you built your personality around avoiding disappointment, avoiding rejection, avoiding conflict. But in doing so, you accidentally built a life where your happiness is always the sacrifice, never the priority. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or eye-opening, Make sure to hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more practical psychology insights, self-awareness tools, and mind-sharpening advice. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.